We remind U.S. citizens not to travel to Israel or Iraq and not to travel to Iran under any circumstances. The Department of State has established the Middle East Task Force to help coordinate support for U.S. citizens, our U.S. diplomatic missions, and personnel and diplomatic engagement. The fact that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon is clear. As the White House reminds us, since taking office, President Trump has clearly stated no fewer than a dozen times that Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon, for anyone who's unclear on that fact. The Middle East has been dealing with the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism, with the attack on Israel on October 7th by Hamas, reminding us of what's at stake. Due to the wisdom of the American people, President Trump's election to a second term has offered the world a chance to see an American leader committed to solving many of the world's existential threats with determination. Now, as the conflict between Israel and Iran continues, President Trump has also been clear that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has also stated that fact as he has traveled the world working to implement President Trump's vision of peace and security. That statement has also been uttered from this podium many times. The fact that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon is clear. As the White House reminds us, since taking office, President Trump has clearly stated no fewer than a dozen times that Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon, for anyone who's unclear on that fact. President Trump has made the same pledge no fewer than 40 times before taking office, even as far back as 2011. One of the highest priorities of the Trump administration is the safety and security of the American people. To that end, the Department of State has established the Middle East Task Force to help coordinate support for U.S. citizens, our U.S. diplomatic missions, and personnel and diplomatic engagement. The task force is operating 24 hours a day. Over the past week, to help keep U.S. citizens informed, we have issued more than 30 security alerts to countries in the region and updated the travel advisories for Iraq and Israel. We remind U.S. citizens not to travel to Israel or Iraq and not to travel to Iran under any circumstances.
Yes, hi, Tammy, thanks. Thanks for that. Could you give us some more details on this task force, how it's going to work, and specifically if it's going to help Americans potentially leave the region, be repatriated, or depending on the countries that they're in, and any more details you can give on that?
Right. I won't be giving you, just as a reminder of how today is a little bit of a different day for the briefing. There is always things that I can't say to you. And yet we have a long back and forth. Sometimes we have a little bit of a debate. I won't engage in that today. My responses will be perhaps a bit quicker than usual, and I'll be moving around more quickly to reach as many of you as I can. There will be less that I can answer for you because of the circumstances that we're dealing with around the world. So it is, just want you to know it's not personal, but we're working on certain things like the task force as an example. The task force is a group of people who are working, taking the calls of people, of American citizens around the world, making sure that they get connected with what they may need in that region. I won't go into the details of all that the task forces do, of course, but it's about information, making sure people here at the State Department and people that we get the information we need, but also people around the world, American citizens, get directed to the information that they may need as well. So I'll leave it at that, but this is something that the State Department does when there's a situation that requires it, and this is one of those times.
There's some specific consular needs. One in particular that I'm aware of, and there may be more than one, is an American citizen in Iran, where there is no embassy, no consulate. Mm-hmm. Would that be the Swiss protectorate? Would there be other options? Is consular affairs give any advice as to what to do about Americans right now stuck in?
I can't speak to any advice or information regarding individuals in Iran at this point.
And what about American Israelis or Israeli Americans either wanting to come out or wanting to get back home? LL, I believe, has resumed flights in some small measure for people who, some people have kids in Israel and they were visiting the States. And they're American citizens. Is there anything that they can do? Where should they call this number?
Well, obviously, if you know, and we encourage every American, when you travel, is to contact your local embassy or consulate, let them know you're there, make sure you know where they are, have those numbers, and that's what I would recommend, no matter where you're traveling, but certainly in the Middle East, is know where those entities are, know where the embassy is. So if you're in Israel, obviously it's Tel Aviv or it's Jerusalem.
Are they open?
Well, they will answer their phone. So there's contacts that can happen in the midst of all of this. And of course, I think that's the advice for wherever you are. But clearly, if you're in a certain area, it's obvious in this case that there are certain limitations in that region, and that contact the embassy, the one that is nearest to you, and you will, at the very least, make sure they know where you are, but also they will give you some options for the plans that you would like to make. Yes, Humaira.
Tammy, I understand your limitations, but I have to ask this.
I know you do. It's your job, and I appreciate that. I'm here to take questions, not necessarily always answer them.
Yeah, last
Yes,
night
ma'am.
President Trump said he wants a real end, not a ceasefire. So does the United States support or pursue regime change in Iran, or are we just talking about dismantling Iran's nuclear enrichment, and would that include United States helping Israel strike Fordo?
Well, I'm certainly not going to characterize what President Trump says or tweets, for that matter. He doesn't need characterizing. He's one of the most transparent, one of the most clear individuals that we've known. I think that we can take his word for his word, but I'm not going to speculate on, in a larger sense, what that would mean. That is up to the president. He is the singular guiding hand about what will be occurring from this point forward, as he has been. And I think that dynamic is pretty clear. He says he wants an end, as he has said about every conflict that he has, as a peacemaker, worked to stop peacefully through diplomacy. That has been his commitment. And he wants these things, as he said about a number of situations, not for a month or 6 months, but durable ends to this nature of forever wars. And that has been his posture, and that's his posture now.
The president said he wants to see Iran offers unconditional surrender. I'm not going to ask you to comment on the president's statement, but I'm going to ask you if the secretary is involved in any kind of diplomatic missions with his allies, with the Germans, with the French, trying to offer something to the Iranians as a way out.
Well, I again would not speak on the details of any diplomatic conversations, if they occurred, between whom, what those details would be. We know, of course, the Secretary and the President were at the G7. Their constant work from the moment they came to office has been to, and certainly Secretary Rubio, was to open up conversations and to lead the world through diplomacy to make a difference. But that's the only thing that would guide me when it comes to the nature of the decisions they're making at this point. Yes, ma'am.
Without getting into the details of the conversations, is the door to diplomacy with Iran on its nuclear program still open from the U.S. perspective?
That would be a decision made by President Trump.
Have you heard from the Iranians signaling interest in continuing discussions?
That is not something that I can speak to.
One question on Iraq relates to Iran. Iranian-backed group Qatar Hezbollah threatens the U.S. against interfering in the Israel-Iran conflict, which they said any American intervention in the conflict would prompt the group to target the U.S. interests across the region. Have you reached to the Iraqi government, and what's your message to these groups? And the second question, what's the State Department's assessment of diplomacy? Have you put diplomacy on a side, or you still believe that diplomacy can work with Iran?
Well, again, I'm not going to comment on the nature of how the White House or the President or the DOD will respond to certain remarks or demands made by someone. So you'll have to ask the DOD regarding their reaction in that regard. I would also, though, I know that the President's Truth Social, he's made it very clear, even I think today, and I think I've got that right here. This is, again, one of the things we've learned about President Trump is that when he tweets, when he speaks, the world watches, and it's the most clear framework that we can learn of his approach. He has, I don't know if I can get to the exact one, but he has made it very clear that, oh yes, here we go. He has noted that we don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers, or our patience is wearing thin. Thank you for your attention to this matter. He is making it clear, I think, here regarding certain choices on the ground that are being made, and that what we've asked for regularly is, and what he has made clear is that we were not a part of the initiation of this, certainly. We're not a part of Israel's attacks on Iran. That I think was stated very clearly by both Secretary Rubio and the President. And that's important for them, for people to know. And in this case, of course, the President has made it clear that if Americans are hurt, or in this case, a missile shot at civilians or American soldiers, that there would be a repercussion. I think that would not be surprising. All right, we'll go back. More on Iran. We'll close with you, sir.
Thank you so much. Could you tell us about the role of partner countries in mediation efforts with Iran, like Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and UAE? President Trump recently concluded successful trip to the Middle East. So what can you tell us about the role of these partner countries?
It's clearly he went with a goal in mind. He makes deals. He's the best deal maker in the world. These partners in the Middle East that we have, they understand clearly our intentions and what our goals are. Thankfully, again, to the approach and the style of President Trump. I think that when it comes to, again, the best person who could explain his feelings and thoughts about what's accomplished on any issue is the President himself. So I'd refer you back to what he writes and what he is posting on, I think, a very regular basis, which is helpful to people like me, and I think to the world at large as well.